we go. All right, so we're now recording and we're getting started. If you have any questions, type them into the question box. That's a better place than the chat, but I should be able to see both. I'll do my best. I'm doing this on my own, so I'll be kind of watching the boxes as we go. There's my email address on that screen. If you have any questions later that happen, after you sign off of this, a week, a day, a month later, just shoot them over to me. And we have a lot of resources at our resource page. And I see someone just raised their hand. David just raised his hand. And how do I get to that? I don't know how to do that. Q&A. It's not showing up in the Q&A. Well, I don't know whether you raised it and then let it go, David. Sorry, let me just see what I can figure this out. There you go. All right. I didn't see a question from you, so we're just keep going, guys. So why referrals? Well, we know that referrals are a pretty powerful thing. I've been doing this for 25 years. If I had to summarize everything I've been doing and why referrals work for 25 years into 2 words, it'd be borrowed trust, right? We borrow the trust in one relationship long enough to earn our own trust in the new relationship. And from there, everything gets easy, right? Easier to reach people, easier to set up phone calls. They follow your recommendations. Why? Because someone else that they know and trust has followed your recommendations. Higher client loyalty. And studies have shown that a client that comes into a business through referrals, in your case, financial practice, is 2.5 times more likely to give referrals because they met you through a referral. So it's a very powerful way to build a business. But, we're kind of moving away from the word referrals a little, not entirely. Old habits die hard. We really want to focus on introductions these days. Why? Because we need the connection, right? We got to get connected with folks. And someone says, call George, use my name. We know it's hard to reach George, even if we use their friend's name. They're going to say, oh, why is Bob, giving my name out to this guy? Right? In fact, Matt Oxley did a study that kind of showed this. It's fascinating. Now, Matt works mostly with wealthy individuals, so it's geared towards them. But I think it's probably true for a lot of folks. 83% said they don't like to give referrals. Right? Well, okay, so why am I in business? Well, what we know is that of his the business only clients, these are advisors, agents who have more of just a pure business relationship. 73% said they like to give introductions. And when you have that business friendship, which I've covered in past webinars and I'll cover in future webinars, when you have the business friendship, then what's happening is even more. These people like to make introductions. So that's why we're favoring the word introductions. And I'll kind of explode this as we go, just show you what it looks like for your business. Like I said, I've been doing this for 25 years. I've written 4 books on the topic. Those 3 are still in print that are showing on the screen. Get more referrals now. Don't keep me secret. Beyond referrals. I'm actually writing a new book called Radical Relevance. Here's what I've discovered. That while a lot of folks get referrals, even introductions, I was interviewing a group of kind of top producers for this one company getting ready to give a speech. And I said to them, when you get introduced, when you get referred, what do you say? What do you say when you reach out to them? And I was pretty astonished by the sameness and the kind of lack of relevance and compelling messages that these folks used. And yet they were still having pretty good success. And so what I realized, of course, is that just doubles down on the importance of getting referred or introduced, because that'll push you past a weak value proposition. And with that said, I'm going to help you with your value proposition as well in my next book. So we're working hard to get that thing out as quick as we possibly can. And of course, today's program is about de-asking, about being appropriately proactive. But I'll show you how it fits in context with our entire system. Look, your opportunity is huge. For 25 years, I've been doing this, and here's pretty much what I've observed. Everybody's numbers are slightly different, but not a whole lot. 20% of your clients will give you referrals without asking. We should all be getting those. That's a sign of good relationships. We have to be referable, right? And another 20% or so will never do it, right? You can run into a burning building and save their children. They wouldn't introduce you to anybody. And doesn't mean they're not a good client. Doesn't mean you don't serve them well and help them, their family, their business. But probably not going to get anything from them short of a lightning strike. And then the 60%, that's the gold mine that most people are sitting on. This is your gold mine. This is your opportunity. You probably know that, and that's why you're here today. That's what I want to help you tap into. So I have kind of a hierarchy around referrals. And it goes a little like this: leads, all right? Leads are not getting any cheaper. You know, most people should wean themselves off of leads after the third year or so anyway. I understand if you're new in the business, you may need to take some of those, but we know they don't always close at a very high rate. You know, some people forget they even checked off some box requesting information. Most people don't want to try to build a business on that. And most successful financial advisors and agents and consultants, you know, have turned their back on leads years ago. A few, if they can get high quality leads, will still take them. But then the next level is the word of mouth. I kind of mentioned that already. Referrals, introductions without asking. You know, you get an email, you get a phone call. My friend George said I should talk to you. That's good. That counts, right? It's great to get that. It's a sign of high referability, but hard to build and sustain a business just on that, especially early on in your career. All right, now the referral, sometimes called the referred lead. Call George, use my name. I already mentioned it's hard to reach George anyway. And so that's usually not quite enough to get us cooking. Now, if we have a client who recommends that George take our call, right? George, take his call to be worth a few minutes of your time. Or Laura, you really should sit down with him. He's going to open your eyes to a lot of good ideas. Now we're getting recommended. That's really good. And that's very, very helpful. But we want to get connected too, right? We don't want just someone giving word of mouth with a recommendation. We want a connection with a recommendation. And that's what an advocate does. An advocate is someone who will recommend us, will advocate for us, and that their friend or their family member should at least, you know, hear what we have to say. And then they'll pay attention to the connection, right? Have you had clients who've given you a referral and introduction? They call you later. Have you talked to my friend? Or email, or they're emailing their friend. Have you heard from my agent yet? Right? It's pretty common to have that. And we want to get more of those. I was doing a coaching program for a small firm in Virginia Beach, and Brian said to me, Bill, these advocates, are they born? Is it in their DNA, or can we actually create them? And the answer is yes and yes. Some people are born that way. You probably have a few clients like that. They love to make connections for lots of different reasons. And that's good. And they pay attention to them, and it helps, and we nurture those relationships. And then others can be brought up to that level. And that's usually a matter of educating them on who you serve the best, how you'll handle that introduction, what it will look like. I'll cover a little bit of that as we go here today. And then I'll do a webinar down the road for Insurance WebEx just on how do we create these advocates, right? What does that look like? So getting referrals, introductions, it's not just about asking. That's part of it. That's what we're covering today. But really, a bigger picture, it's about the culture. We're trying to create a culture of client engagement, referrals, and really introductions, connections with prospects, with clients, with centers of influence, etc. And it has to start with our thinking, our mindset. Don't worry, I'm going to get very strategic and very tactical, but this is important because if we don't have the right mindset, the right thinking, the right beliefs in place, all the strategies and ideas in the world, you know, will fall by the wayside. You won't use them because you may have some underlying thinking that's preventing you from doing that. So, you know, first of all, have you made the decision to meet prospects the way they want to meet you, right? Have you made that conscious decision to commit to the referral process? You know, we know that the way of the world is meeting people through other people, and the referral, the introduction is a warm way we get into their lives. So, you know, have you committed, or are you dabbling? And you know the difference. And maybe you've been dabbling, and that's why you're here today, because you'd like to create a stronger commitment. So it starts with that. Lifetime value of your clients. What's the lifetime value? Well, it's certainly the business you can do with them over a lifetime, but isn't it also who they can introduce you to over a lifetime? But if that's not your thinking, you'll miss that opportunity, right? We pay attention to our clients. We pay attention to who they know at the beginning of when we meet them and throughout the relationship, because we know at some point in time, those folks might be candidates to become aware of what we do as well. So we're thinking lifetime value. Giving referrals, right? Finish this phrase for me. As you give, you receive, right? The law of reciprocity. We know it works in all aspects of our life. And yet, a lot of financial professionals are reluctant to give referrals. I was doing a presentation in Nashville two Januaries ago. I'll never forget, this guy came up to me. And he says, Bill, I think I figured out why I don't like to ask for referrals. And I said, well, lay it on me. He says, I don't like to give referrals. I said, yeah, you figured it out. That's it. There's a disconnect. If we don't like to be asked for referrals, or we don't like to give referrals, and I should be saying introductions, then guess what? We're not going to ask people either. So that's a reframe that's got to take place. It's cognitive dissonance. If we have a belief or a perspective, it's rare that we will push ourselves to act in discord with that belief or that perspective. So we got to change our perspective before we can change our behavior. Do you believe that asking for introductions is safe or risky? Most people think it's risky. Limiting belief. I'm going to show you today it doesn't have to be risky. We don't have to hurt relationships, et cetera, et cetera. But if you believe it's risky, again, I could give you all the strategies in the world. Unless that becomes accessible to you and you're really willing to let go of that and try this in a little different way, you'll never get to that point, right? Limiting belief, no question. And please remember this. I always have fun with this when I do my live presentations, that cold calls are God's punishment for failure to get enough referrals, right? So if you're stuck in cold call hell, you're in the right place, and stay in my world because we're going to help you out. Some people believe that asking for help is a sign of weakness, but any psychologist will tell you that asking for help is actually a sign of strength. And in this case, aren't we asking for help to help others, right? It isn't the old methodology. Let me tell you, I get paid in two ways. It's not, I'm trying to build my business, I could really use your help. It's not coming from a needy place. It's coming from a place of strength and knowing the value we provide in a place of service. My friend Rory Vaden says it's hard to be nervous when your heart's in service. That's what this is about. It's coming from that perspective of bringing our value to other people. And then when I do my live presentations, I always have fun with this. I say to the audience, I blank to get referrals. What fits here for you? And inevitably someone says, I love to get referrals. I say, great. And then what else? And sometimes I hear beg to get referrals. No begging zone. Sometimes I'll hear give to get referrals, means they've been paying attention. Sometimes I hear forget, right? Or forget about referrals and introductions. And so when someone tells me they forget, what they're really telling me is they haven't fully committed, and there's some discomfort there, right? There's some fear around that, and they're not willing to get through that. And what happens is our fear, our comfort zone, kind of manages the appointments for us, and we run out of time, we forget. I'll show you a simple way to not forget anymore if you're willing to go there. So the last mindset thing I want to mention is expect, an attitude of expectation. Now, I don't recommend you necessarily say to prospects and clients, I expect you to introduce me to people. That's usually pretty too assertive for most people, but it's an attitude we bring. It's an attitude of confident awareness, right? You're confident in the value you bring. You know you bring value to individuals and businesses and families, and then you become aware of who your clients know. You ask good curiosity probing questions in an effort to get to know them and just build rapport and trust, and develop a little bit of an inventory of people that you can then bring up in conversation, and you'll see how that plays a big role as we go. So let me just take a look. I'm not seeing any questions coming in. Let me just click there's the Q&A pane and the chat pane. I'm just looking around to kind of make sure I'm not missing anything from anybody. So it looks good. We will keep going. All right. So I mentioned becoming more referable. That's not the main topic here, but I do want to just cover it briefly so you get the full context. You see how this plays a role in us being able to get more referrals and introductions. So Julie Littlechild did a study. She's based in Toronto of financial advisory clients. And here's what she found. She found that satisfied clients are pretty loyal, as you might expect them to be. But there's actually a low correlation between satisfied clients and the actual giving of referrals or making introductions. Then she looked at engaged clients, kind of a higher level, and very loyal, of course. And in the engaged clients, 98% gave one or more referrals in the preceding 12 months. Who gives referrals? Engaged clients. We have to create that sense of client engagement, which means they feel engaged about our value. They feel good about your value. They like the questions you ask. They like the things you teach. They like your responsive service all along the way. That's the value. And they like you. They're feeling good about you. We don't have to become bosom buddies, but there has to be that likability factor there. And the good news is, if we create that engagement and then we leverage, which today is all about, and then we create a good connection, we get introduced, and then we create engagement with a new prospect. This continues. This will create a continual flow of referrals for you, for your business, if you just manage these 3 stages of the process that we teach. All right, so real quick, the 3 stages of the client journey is the prospect experience. We want to make sure that we show that value, bring that value, and connect with who we are as an individual with the prospect, so that they'll, number 1, want to become a client, want to work with us, as long as it's a good match, a win-win, and we're becoming more referable more quickly. Onboarding process, making sure we're bringing people into our world in a way that goes, wow, I've never been treated like this by a financial guy, right? And Brian Sweet, who just brought me in to speak at his Elite Wealth Advisor Symposium in Miami a couple of weeks ago, has what he calls a 90-day Dazzle program. We're doing an online coaching program with him and his team, and they have the 90-day Dazzle program, and that's an onboarding, right? Kind of an onboarding process on steroids. And then the ongoing client experience, how we stay in touch with clients in an ongoing way, your client service model. I recommend you think about calling it the client service promise, because when you talk about your client service promise, then you can hear in that word promise is kind of the word commitment, right? Here's what we promise to do. So I found that it had a lot of teeth. We got a question in real quick. Robert says, how do I use email to get introduced? Well, Robert's a little off topic, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make available a report that will give that to you. So I can give everybody in this call that information of how you create what I call an electronic handshake. And so let me see, how do I guess I answer it live and then I'm done. So I will send that to you. But there is a preferred way to get introduced by email. You could get introduced where they say, you've seen this before, right? Hey, George, I want to tell you about my advisor, Laura. She's done a great job. I've CC'd her on this, and she'll probably be reaching out. Well, that's better than nothing. That's at least a little bit of a connection. But what's a better one is when they go, hey, George, meet Laura, Laura, meet George, and that's what I'll show you to. So some folks are saying in the chat, yes, please send the electronic handshake. I will do that. I will make sure we find a way to get that to everybody. That slide shouldn't be there, so we'll keep going. All right, so let's get into the being more appropriately proactive. One way is to promote referrals. This is short of asking. I want to cover just a couple because you can see how it kind of creates that opportunity to ask later. So one way is to promote, to plant seeds, things you can do early in a relationship. Some of you have heard me say this. You're welcome, Steve. You're welcome, JR. Don't keep me a secret, right? Simple little phrase, little fun phrase, goes into their unconscious. Later, they're having a conversation around personal finance with a friend, family member, colleague. And that don't keep me a secret kind of kicks into their head. And this can generate, I've seen this generate referrals on the spot. I've seen it do it later. Larry DeNoia up in Westchester, New York. He said, I said, don't keep me a secret to a client on a Friday morning. Sister called me Friday evening. She invested almost $1 million with me on that Monday. He says it was the fastest turnaround from prospect to client he's ever had, from a Friday to a Monday. He says, pays to say, don't keep me a secret, and to work a little late on Friday. So that's a simple way to promote. Here's another simple thing you can do right after this webinar is over. Leave on your outgoing voice message. Please leave a message at the tone. If you're recommended to us, please let us know who we need to thank. Right? Just read that again. You got it. You'll get the recording. Please let us know who we need to thank. Now you're sending that message to the world. I actually learned this from my office manager a number of years ago when a call came into our office and she's talking with a prospect. And after a few minutes, she said, by the way, who referred you to us so we need know who to thank? And I'm thinking, I overheard this. I think that's brilliant, right? So this is just another way to stir the pot, get it going. I've talked to many clients I've coached over the years who started using this, and it occasionally turns into a client, and it's just part of building that culture I mentioned. Probably the most powerful way to be proactive for referrals and introductions, I keep saying, short of actually asking, is to teach your clients what it would look like. What it would look like if if they thought of someone who should know about you, right? So let me give you a sense of what it must sound like, and then I have a way for you to get the scripting I'm about to give. So it goes like this. George, something I want to run by you real quick. Many of my clients like to introduce me and the work I do to others, and I just thought if that opportunity ever presented itself, it'd be good for you to have a sense of how I'd handle it so you'd feel comfortable. First of all, the work we do completely confidential. They're not going to learn about your financial situation from me, and vice versa. Even with close family, we're very careful. We don't cross that line. And we handle this sort of thing with great care, meaning I don't want to call people from out of the blue and surprise them and make them wonder, why did George give my name out to this guy, right? Nobody likes to get that kind of call. I like to work through introductions. So if you identify one or more people, we'll talk. We'll see, does it make sense for me to reach out to them? And how would you like to introduce me? We'll craft an approach that feels comfortable for you, comfortable for them, and at least, piques their interest in hearing from me. How's that sound? And that's an easy yes for a client. They'll say, sure. And now you've planted a very strong seed. And then the next time, perhaps you actually ask for some introductions. One of the things that this does as well is it kind of acts as a barometer. It gives you a feeling for their relationship to the referral process. If in this they react and say, well, I'm pretty private person, we say, no, I get that. I appreciate that. We'll only do it in the right way when the time is right. Or if they say, I'm not so sure. I've had some bad experiences with this. And now, if you still have time in the appointment, you can explore that a little bit. Say, tell me more. What happened? You can share, a little more of what you would do, what it would look like. So at least they're starting to feel a little more comfortable. Or you may back off for a little while. So it's a little bit of a barometer to get a sense of their relationship to the referral process. So I've got the verbiage. The thing, what I just explained to you, it's my gift to you. I will also add in the electronic introduction. So just shoot me an email. That's all I ask. I'm not sending this to everybody. I'm just sending it to folks who attended this call today, now live on January 31st. And just put WebEx reports in the email. Bill Cates, not Bill Gates, we wish, right? Bill Cates at referralcoach.com. Put WebEx reports, and I'll get this one and a few others I'm going to mention along the way as we go. So one thing I've learned about asking for referrals is that smart, confident people such as yourself, when it comes to being proactive, turn into a bowl of quivering jello. It's like, you're smart, you're capable, you're confident, but all of a sudden you get into this place of I don't want to look needy and all that sort of stuff, right? And so the number one fear that I've seen, and a lot of little ones I've seen crop up over the years, but the number one is that fear of rejection. Somehow you equate someone not wanting to play this quote unquote referral introductions game into rejection for you. And when the truth is, it usually has nothing to do with you. It's their relationship to this referral process. Using the methodology I'm about to show you, you'll get fewer of these, but occasionally people don't want to do this, and you just have to be prepared to that and prepared to back off, but just don't let it stop you, right? Don't let this fear stop you. Joe Winslow, very high up in his firm. He's out in the San Mateo, California area. He says, I've been using Bill's system for 10 years. I ask and get referrals, introductions, high-level prospects. And with that said, he said this to his colleagues, by the way, when I was out there giving a presentation. He says, but sometimes there's still a little piece of me that's uncomfortable. And then he said the magic words, I just don't let that stop me, right? He is very cognizant of his relationship to this little discomfort, this fear, and he just doesn't let it stop. He says it doesn't happen much anymore, but every now and then he feels that, but he just moves forward anyway. So, introducing you to our V.I.P.S method, asking for referrals. Think of the referrals that you get, the introductions that you get, as the V.I.Ps of your business. And that way you'll remember this little acronym V.I.P.S. We got to get off to this slide quickly so we don't give someone a migraine. All right, so the V is the value discussion, which is really the cornerstone of what I've been teaching for 25 years. This is a check-in conversation. You're checking in with prospects along the way. You're checking with clients just to make sure they're seeing the value. What value are they seeing? This is not a closed-ended yes or no question. It's not a setup. Have you found value in the work we've done today? Yeah, great. Who do you know? No, this is a discussion. It's a back and forth. We prepare a little bit for this. What do we, what's happened in the relationship, that we might want to check in on that might not be good working for them, and what are they finding value? So Julia Littlechild in her study really confirmed why this is so important. In her study, she's found that 40% of clients who provided referrals in the preceding 12 months were asked for them. Now, we know we can ask and get. Don't let anybody tell you that you should stop asking for referrals and introductions. They're just projecting their own fear and lack of good strategy on you. So don't settle for that. We know we can do it, and that's what this is about. But she discovered that 72% of clients who provided referrals in the last 12 months were asked for feedback. That's the check-in. That's the value discussion, checking in, right? And so I'm going to send you a report on this in just a second. We conduct value discussions whether we're going to ask for referrals or introductions or not. This, I believe, should become a normal, regular part of your practice, that near the end of every meeting, you're just checking in. Let your clients know to expect this, that this is how you work. This is to make sure that nothing slips through the cracks, to make sure that nobody sits on any complaint or resentment, right? And this creates that sense of engagement. So my second gift for you is the value discussion report. So this allows me to cover a lot more here live, and then I'll supplement with some of these things for you. So you'll have a lot of good info as a result of this webinar sponsored by Insurance WebEx. So again, just send me an email. Say you don't have to send a separate one for each report. Just do it once. Put WebEx reports, and I'll get this out to you. And let me just check the chat line to see if anything's come in. Not seeing anything, so I think we're good. And we'll have time at the end to just kind of say any last questions. All right, so the I is treat the request with importance. Why do we treat it with importance? Well, because we want to come across confident. We don't want to be needy. We know the importance of the work we do. It all goes together. How do you treat it with importance? Well, one way is to never forget. I mentioned the way to make sure you never forget. And that is always use an agenda. Every meeting, every business meeting you ever go on, they come to you, you come to them, have an agenda. It could be 3 items, could be 7 items, doesn't matter. And the next to last item are the words value discussion or value check-in, or it could be communication check-in, communication review, anything like that. Don't put referrals, don't put introductions on the agenda. Those, those words are emotionally charged for some people, and they may not be ready yet. But you're going to check in. That's your reminder. That's your personal accountability to have that value discussion. And if things are looking good and they see the value, then you can go to the next step. That way, you'll never forget again, and you got to manage your appointment to the agenda, right? Another way to treat it with importance is to talk a little bit about why you do what you do. One of the things I teach in the webinars around how to become more referable is in that prospect experience, talk about your client-centered why you believe in your value. Something happened to you or a client or a family member, a client-centered why. And you believe, here's a generic one, you believe that everyone deserves the opportunity to make an educated decision that's in their best interest around their financial lives, right? And so that's what you're bringing to the table, and you believe in that. And everyone should at least have a look and make the right decisions for themselves. And so this is a place you can bring that back, and that's, again, treating with importance, just with your demeanor, the confidence you bring to this, and not being weak and wishy-washy. Permission to brainstorm. This is what takes the pressure off, because we know that not everyone likes to talk about introductions. Some people are comfortable right away. Some, warm up to it. Some don't ever want to do it. So what we're doing is trying to get buy-in, to explore, to collaborate, to brainstorm, whatever word you want to use, kind of a give and take. So we might suggest an individual or a category of folks, and maybe they don't know anybody at that category, or maybe they don't feel comfortable introducing you to their Uncle Ernie, and you say, well, that's fine. We're just brainstorming. I do have a couple other ideas. Can we keep the conversation alive? And so we're making it a give and take, but with no pressure. We're trying to identify the people willing to have this conversation and those who don't want to have this conversation, and proceed accordingly. And those who do, great, we move forward. Those who don't, we back off, we plant the seed, we do it down the road. S, suggest names and categories. And this means come prepared and let your client or prospect or center of influence know that you've come prepared. So what does that look like? Well, it looks a little like this. The bullseye would be specific people they've mentioned. This is the easiest, most confident way to approach clients and centers of influence for introductions. Remember, people don't like to be asked for referrals, but they love to give introductions. And so whenever you hear a client mention, someone they know, could be, family member, friend, colleague on the board of directors of their industry association, you name it, you're writing it down. You may not be jumping on the opportunity right then, that may not be appropriate, but you're writing it down. You got this little inventory, and then you can bring it to the table here. George, how do you feel about introducing me your sister-in-law, Laura, and her husband? You mentioned they're in the area. You said they're pretty successful, and you also said they're busy. And whenever I hear successful and busy in the same sentence, I know there's a good chance that maybe they aren't taking the time to focus on this important part of their lives. Can we come up with an approach to introduce me that would feel comfortable to you? Right? A very specific, clear request for an introduction. Now, if you can start there, or if you don't have that, then you can move out the ring a little bit, and that would be specific categories of people. Could be what was going on in their life when they met you. Could be a life event, could be a money emotion type of category. George, you came to us because you were changing jobs. George, you came to us because you were getting serious about planning for retirement. Or George, you came to us because you inherited some money and you wanted some guidance on that. Whatever the category is, you can just start there. Gosh, do you know anybody else who might be in a similar situation who should at least be aware of us? And so you're moving out a little bit. I think you can see, the power weakens a little. LinkedIn, lists, directories. I'll do a webinar on LinkedIn at some point, how to use that. But essentially, it's a way to create a list. The challenge with LinkedIn, as you know, is that we're all connected to people that we don't even know who they are sometimes, right? We've said yes, and for whatever reason, we thought quantity was better than quality. You know how LinkedIn says, it tells people it's your work anniversary or whatever. You don't even know if it's your work anniversary, but somehow LinkedIn thinks it is. And then you start getting all these congratulations. I've been getting a lot of those lately, and most of the people I don't even know who they are. So, I'm happy to serve them and happy to bring value to them. Don't get me wrong, but I wouldn't be able to make any introductions to them or vice versa. So that's the challenge with that. Now, so where LinkedIn tends to work the best is in a niche, in a vertical market. If you're creating that reputation for yourself and targeting folks, let's say in a large company or in a specific industry or university, for instance, that's where I found this can work really well, because Professor Jones probably knows Professor Smith. And so the odds are much higher. One way to have fun with this, by the way, is you can say, Professor Jones, I made a list of some of the other professors here in Vanderbilt. And, I thought I'd run it by, and, if you were me, who would you avoid at all costs? And they'll laugh and they'll say, give me that list. Let me look at that. Right. And you have a little fun with that. And the final, outskirts of this, I guess, outer ring would be open-ended brainstorming. And there's nothing wrong with that. You just don't want to start with it. You don't want to say, hey, who do you know we can help? Because what happens? It fizzles most of the time. So start specific. Let them know you've got a couple ideas. You can say, I got a couple categories I'd like to run by you. Or you've mentioned a couple folks in past meetings. I want to just run by you, see what you think. And then you expand out of there. So maybe you suggest one or two. Maybe they're willing to introduce you to someone. And you say, well, that's what I came prepared with. Gosh, who do you think should be aware of what I do? And sometimes they'll have somebody, one or two or three. Sometimes they'll pull out their smartphone and they'll start going through their list of friends. That's a beautiful thing, right? So, it goes essentially like this. I'm glad to see the value in the work we're doing. So let's say it's a review meeting. All right, let's use that as the context for me to demonstrate this. George, let's shift gears for a second. Let's put the market aside. Let's put the economy aside. Let's talk about something we can control, which is our communication, our overall working relationship. First of all, anything that's not working that I should be aware of, anyone dropped the ball or whatever. And, they may say, well, I'd like to meet more often. Or they may say, yeah, you remember that your assistant didn't return my phone call a couple months ago. And you kind of clean up any little stuff if it's there. Most of the time they can say, no, everything's good. Well, tell me what is working for you. Tell me how you found value in the process we've been through to get to this point. Open-ended, let them get in touch with the value. That's the value discussion, right? I'm glad to see the value, and I believe in the value of what we do. My mission is to make sure everyone at least makes an educated decision that's in their best interest. And so I was hoping we could put our heads together for a second, brainstorm, maybe see if we can identify a few folks that you think should at least be aware of what I do. It might be worthy of an introduction. I've thought of a couple of folks that you've mentioned in past meetings. Can I run it by you just to see what you think? Tell me they're not going to be curious. They might even say, well, I'm not sure, I like to do that sort of thing, but who are you thinking about? And so you definitely get past the objection, I can't think of anyone, because you've already thought of a few folks. That's the suggest names and categories. So that's the essence of what that sounds like. Robin Wolf, she's in Miami. She's, I think when she sent this to me, she had been in business for roughly 20 years. She's been at it for a while. But what really sticks out with me in this statement she sent to us is, I'm having so much fun with this. Here's someone who was never particularly good at this, maybe felt a little guilty about this because she knew she had high quality clients, good relationships, but wasn't taking that next step of being proactive. And now she's having fun. Total mind shift and ability for her to create exponential growth. I mentioned the idea of having fun. I'm just checking the time, see how we're doing here. Lots of different ways to do this. I gave you one. Here's another one. Art's a financial professional in Baltimore. He says to his clients, yeah, we're just brainstorming here. I'm looking for about 100 names. And his clients go, 100? Art, we don't even know 100 people. We only had 60 at our wedding. Oh, okay, too many. How about 3 or 4? Right? So they laugh. He's got that kind of sense of humor, and that works for him. So obviously this has to fit you and your personality. Doug is in Omaha. Doug says, hey, we're just brainstorming. First of all, do you know any lottery winners? Clients laugh. No, Doug, we don't know any lottery winners, right? So, but he has some fun. And what happens when you have a little fun on the front end of this? Everything gets easier, right? Here's a list of a few folks I know you know. Who should I avoid at all costs? I don't know. Give me that list. I'll tell you, right? So then everything gets easier after that. It takes any kind of discomfort or stress out of the conversation. So let's say someone doesn't want to do this. How do you back off? What's the escape plan, if you will? My friend Barry Alberstein, I just heard from Barry yesterday. He calls it the graceful exit because Barry is a very classy guy. I call it the emergency exit because I just like to have fun. And so it's really simple. What we're doing is we're just planting the seed. We're promoting the possibility as we back off. George, that's fine. Next time you recognize someone you think should be aware of the work I do, just don't keep me a secret. Make sense? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Or, Laura, I just want you to be aware of the fact I'm never too busy to see if I can be a resource for other people you care about. Fair enough? Yep, fair enough. Sure, we'll keep you in mind. And that's it. No harm, no foul. What we found is you can do this till the cows come home. You'll never hurt a relationship. You'll never lose a client. And some people who won't do it now will do it later. You've probably experienced this. You had a client, you asked, maybe they didn't want to go there. And next time you see them, they say, hey, I think I have somebody for you. They want to do it on their own terms. We give them a chance to do that. We have to be careful about being too aggressive here. Now, to avoid referral objections, very simple formula strategy for you here. Essentially, don't ask. I mean, if you ask, they can say no, but if you don't ask, the answer is always no. So, right, what we want to do is get past that fear. So, where do you start with this? Well, you're sitting on low-hanging fruit. Everybody's sitting on low-hanging fruit. Clients who love you, right? These are clients that you have that business friendship. I was coaching a group this morning, and one of the guys, Oliver, said, I asked the client who loves me, happened to be my mom, and she introduced me to a few folks. I said, that's it. Start there, right? Mom, clients, people who love you. You can bumble through this. They'll feel sorry for you and give you some introductions. So that's kind of the low-hanging fruit, a path of least resistance for you and for them. And then anyone who's already given you a referral or an introduction, right? Someone who's played this a little bit in the past, just go back to them and say, you introduced me to your colleague on the board of directors. I appreciate that. I'm working with Larry now, and I got a couple other ideas I'd like to run by if that's okay. Right? You can't hurt that relationship. Now, if you're not ready to do this yet, if you're not ready to take this leap of going to the low-hanging fruit and using the V.I.P.S, let me give you a couple of stepping stones. The first one is the value discussion. Get in the habit of doing that as many times as you possibly can. On that call I was talking about earlier this morning, Ty was the first one on to report from the group, and Ty said, Bill, I had 9 meetings last week. I had 9 value discussions, and I actually planted seeds with 2 of them. Now we got to work him up to asking, but he just started to do the value discussions, and then the next step would be plant the seed, promote referrals. So at least do the value discussion. You'll see some nice results. You'll hear some nice things. Coaching this guy Rod Gibbings out in British Columbia, north of Vancouver, in BC, Canada, and he started doing this value discussion, and he was getting great feedback. His clients said, "Yeah, and Rod, we'd love to introduce you to other people, and how do we do that? You know, how do I talk about you?" And he realized he was sitting on this gold mine of opportunity. In fact, a couple of them, he heard this from 2 separate clients. He said, "You know, Rod, I feel like we're part of this club that, because he does a great job staying in touch with clients." And he picked up on that word club. And so he started saying, kind of feels like a club we've created, right? His clients go, yeah, that's it. He says, the club needs some new members. And so that's how he had some fun with this. It's been working quite well these days. So, value discussion, and then move up the next step to promote, plant seeds, and then, of course, starting to use the V.I.P.S. So now we got a time for a few questions. Let's see if anything's come through. Remember, if you want to get those reports, just send me an email. Bill Cates at referralcoach.com, says WebEx reports. So one question is from Greg. Greg says, should you do this on the phone, in person? What's the best way? Well, Greg, let me give you and everybody the hierarchy of best way to do this. Number 1, in person, always the best. You can see body language. They may say yes, but their body language says no. You want to check in on that. I asked a guy for referrals once over the phone, Howard Henderson, never forget, in South Carolina, Spartanburg, South Carolina. Dead silence on the other end. And I said, Howard, did I make you feel uncomfortable? He said, no, Bill, I'm just thinking, right? So in person, the best. Now, phone can work. Phone's usually best when you have 1 or 2 specific introductions you're looking to get introduced to 1 or 2 specific people in their life. It doesn't take as much time. Most of the time when you're on the phone with clients, even sometimes centers of influence, if it's not a scheduled call that you've set aside to talk about a few things, then usually you and they are trying to get off the phone pretty quickly. So usually you can do a specific one. Hey, Margie, good to see you. I'll answer your question in a second. They're coming in now, guys. The third one would be, can I ask with an email? Well, you can. I ask for referrals, introductions, and emails on occasion if I have a really good relationship and if I have a specific person that I'm looking to get introduced to. Brian, how do you feel about introducing me to Carol? And then we can do that through email. But otherwise, not as powerful. And then some people like to do a letter to their clients. I don't really advocate it. It's usually very unproductive, wasted postage and labor. Better off to send a letter just teaching people how you would handle it if they thought of someone, right? So let's see, Margie say, Bill, isn't it better to ask for referrals when you are delivering the policy instead of during the sales process? Please advise, all my sales are on the phone. This is for long-term care. Yep, I remember. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of an ideal place is a policy delivery. If you're kind of delivering it over the phone, so to speak, walking them through it. Yeah, it's good because it means to get to that point, you've had a meeting or 2, you've provided a couple recommendations, you've gotten to know them a little bit, and you've established some value. Now, can you ask sooner? Sometimes. You can say, by the way, we know that a lot of people have a lot of different opinions around long-term care insurance. Have you talked to friends or neighbors or anybody about this? Oh, yeah, one guy said I shouldn't do it. Another guy said he has it. Yeah. Or, you know what I mean? You can see, are they talking to other people? Yeah, I've got a neighbor who says wants to know how my conversation goes with you. So sometimes you can open up the conversation before you get to that policy delivery. So just be aware of those open style personalities. But if you just make it a habit of doing it, then you're going to do pretty well there. Jeff says, if you have used this approach and someone says no, do you circle back? 6 months later, et cetera, et cetera. Well, a couple things on that, Jeff. First of all, yes, you can circle back unless they really put their foot down and said, don't ever do this again. In which case, maybe you don't ever do it again. But a lot of times it's just timing, right? Here's the key. The key is when you go back and ask a second time, you can still do a value check-in, but you want to make sure that you refer back to what happened last time. So always take a couple notes, have them in your CRM or whatever, and so you know what happened last time. And so you can say, Jeff, when we got together 6 months ago, I broached the idea of seeing if we could identify a few folks that you thought should at least be aware of what I do. And you didn't feel comfortable with that at the time, and I get it. We were just getting to know each other. I do have a couple ideas I'd like to run by you, if that would be okay, if you'd be open to it. So you're acknowledging what happens. It makes it easier, and you're coming prepared, which also helps. Same thing with you got him last time, right? Jeff, last time we got together, you introduced me to your brother. I appreciate it. I know he told you we're working together. I do have a couple other ideas I'd like to run by. Actually, a couple categories really of people. Would you mind? They've already done this, right? Usually pretty simple. What you just want to make sure you do is refer back to what happened, right? That makes them feel comfortable. Hope that helps. Robert asked, how do I get around the do not call rules? Yeah, well, that's where the email introductions become so powerful, so important, because, sorry, I hit a wrong button here. Sorry, guys. That's why we got to want to get connected, right? Now, in person is great, but with an email, at least they're going to introduce you. George, take Laura's call, take Robert's call. It'll be worth a few minutes of time. You follow up. Hey, George, And then, can we set up a quick phone call? Can we set up a 10, 15-minute phone call just to get the conversation started, see if it makes sense? And now you got permission in an email to call them, right? And now you're good. You're past the do not call regulation. So that's why email introductions are so valuable for folks in the financial services arena. Now, if they don't want to do that, let them know. If they just give you a name and phone number, you say, Robert, I appreciate this. This is their home number, right? Well, if they're on the do not call list, I'm not going to be able to call them. Do you have their email address? Maybe I'll start with an email, or maybe you could just send them an email and kind of give them a heads up, and then I can reach out and get permission to call. Would that be okay? And then usually if you explain that, if you say a phrase that I've used for years, it works well, is here's what I found works the best. Then usually you can get kind of past that, and they're willing to do that. Jair says, you gave me some awesome pointers. I'm going to start with sending last year's clients a letter with a snapshot of your screen that stated, don't keep me a secret. I think that's great, JR. I've actually, it's funny you said that, because I've actually had people tell me over the years, just occasionally, that they've set my homepage or one of my pages as their kind of their screensaver, right? Which we don't need as much as we used to with today's screens. But so he knew that whenever he opened up his browser, he'd see referral coach, and that would be his reminder, right, to do this. So yeah, use that. It's fine. I've seen people do to create their own thank you cards, which says thank you for not keeping me a secret, or on any thank you card, you could write that on the inside. I do that myself. Thanks for not keeping me a secret. And so yeah, have fun with that. It is a fun thing. Well, those are the questions, and we are just about out of time. So I hope you found this available. One more, thanks. You're welcome, Co. And again, we'll be sending those reports. If you sent me that email, the 3 reports is electronic handshakes, and well, I know what they are. We'll get them to you. And then we'll be doing more for WebEx. Every quarter, we're going to do these through Insurance WebEx. And I'll also show you how to get in my world a little bit, because we do other webinars not through them. And when I send out the recording, I'll show you how to do that. If you want to stay in touch with this sort of stuff, I'm happy to serve any way I can. Always looking for opportunities to speak at agencies, at conferences, and whatnot. So if you're in a position to recommend or introduce when it comes for a speaking opportunity, please don't keep me a secret. All right, guys, thanks so much, and hope to talk to you and see you again. Thank you.